Hello and welcome to Protect Life here at Breaking the Consensus. I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight, where we're going to be talking to Professor Ger Casey about the upcoming referendum. Before we start, I'd like to invite you to click on that follow button there, the subscribe button, which will mean that any new material, anything that we do, you will be advised of it. Also, you'll see the donate button there. Anything that you can do will be used to the best of our ability to promote the causes that and those values that we share. So tonight we're talking to Professor Ger Casey, who for a long time professor of philosophy at University College Dublin, and we're going to be talking about something which perhaps there isn't enough talk about in the absence of a government-funded side on the to explain the no position. Lots of money available to other people, but and maybe we might tangentially touch on the justice or otherwise of that. But so we're going to start. Jared, what I'd like you to do first of all is to explain. We're talking about one of the referendums here rather than both specifically
Yes.
tonight. First of all, if you could tell us what the Constitution as it stands says, and what the proposal is for the change that we're going to be asked to vote on, and then if you can get into what are the consequences of what this vote might mean.
All right. Well, so I want to talk about the proposed amendment 39. Okay. And right now, this proposes an amendment to Article 41 of the Constitution. And at the moment, Article 41, subsection 1, subsection 1, that's 41.1.1, reads as follows. The state recognizes the family as the natural, primary, and fundamental unit group of society. Now, the proposal is to have that read, the state recognizes the family, and to insert the following, whether founded on marriage or on other durable relationships, comma, as the natural and fundamental, etc., etc. Okay, so it proposes to make that insertion into the first part of Article 41, and then from Article 43, sorry, I beg your pardon, Article 41, subsection 3, which now reads, the state pledges itself to guard with special care the institution of marriage, comma, on which the family is founded, comma, and it proposes to take out that section on which the family is founded. So there are two things. They're inserting a bit on marriage or on other durable relations, and then of necessity, obviously, the section where it says on which marriage is founded. Sorry, yeah, I beg your pardon. The institution of marriage on which the family is founded takes that out. So that's the proposal, right? And the problem is, the basic fundamental problem is, and I don't know what your experience has been of talking to people about this, but mine has been that very few people know, A, what is being proposed, and B, even if they know what's being proposed, what it means. And C, even if they know what it means or think they know what it means, what its implications are going to be in practice. And that's very significant. I mean, this is true even even when this is going through the door. The people you would normally expect to be on the other side of this issue from reactionaries like myself had real problems. So I'm going to tell you what a few people have said, and this may surprise listeners. So, for example, Ivana Bacik said, durable relationships is not a phrase which has that precise and established legal meaning, which I think we need. Okay, that's not me, that's Bacik, right? Holly Cairns, who's the leader of the Social Democrats, says, what exactly is being defined as a durable relationship under the law? For example, at what point does a couple in a relationship come under the protection of Article 41? What are the implications for the application of taxation policy, social welfare payments, joint income assessments, succession, family law and mortgages, to name a few areas? And then from the government party, Jennifer Carroll MacNeil, Fine Gael TD, says, it, talking about durable relationships, is not a constitutional concept that I have ever seen. I questioned what it meant. It's really important that we tease this through now because it's naturally going to be a question later. What's durability? Is it about commitment or enduring? Circa Clark, Sinn Féin TD, says, the word durable is peculiarly odd and vague in a constitution. We need assurances that this language will not cause legal problems or loopholes. Ambiguity is not much use. We should have some clear and defined wording. And I have more.
Hmm.
Now, of course, they've all been told that this is all you're going to get, right? So you might as well vote yes. So now they have the posters up saying vote yes, yes. But you can see what their real ideas and thoughts were before they were whipped into line. And they're very much the questions that everybody has. What exactly does it mean? Now, Roger O'Gorman, who's sort of carrying the government's, I suppose, lead on this, is anxious to assure us that durable relationships simply means cohabiting couples, unmarried cohabiting couples, and parent-child relations. And that's it. But if that's what they wanted to put into the Constitution, why didn't they put that in? Okay.
Okay. Before we get
Yeah.
into the speculating on the potential consequences of what that may or may not mean in the long term, practically speaking, why do we need this? What is the purpose of this? Because I asked this because we were told, oh, well, we need to do this, we need to protect families. But I'm then told by constitutional lawyers that actually the Supreme Court has made a series of judgments, and we have understood, and we have legislation which says that children, for example, that the court says we can't discriminate on families where, or where you have families with children
Yes.
where the parents are not married.
Yeah. That's pretty
So,
much it. In fact, as recently as January of this year, right? They told us that. It's a good question. It's quite strange. Um, the actual case was the one was the so-called O'Mara case handed down by the Chief Justice, by the Supreme Court, and this was the case involving two people who'd been living together for some 20 years and had children together. And
yes,
he applied for effectively a widow or widower's pension, had been denied by the Department of Social Welfare and so on. And the court came down in his favor, largely on the grounds, if you like, that he had to support children and that he shouldn't be disadvantaged by not being married. Now, fair enough. But see, there's there's a slight problem here, which is, and I say this earlier on, and look, I don't know if you remember, but we had a referendum on the subject of marriage not so long
yes,
ago, and we were told that marriage was such a great social good that it had to be available to everybody, regardless of sex,
yes.
and that it was totally inappropriate to deny people the blessings of this wonderful institution simply because they happen to be the same sex. So this is what we were told. I don't know how many years ago. Not that very long, right?
Not that long ago, no,
Yeah.
indeed. We were told that in fact, and one of the purposes of the referendum, amongst many others, would be to strengthen the institution of marriage
Yes. Okay.
and to recognize the importance of marriage,
Yeah.
and that all citizens should be able to access this vital social institution.
Yeah.
And now we're saying, well, marriage are.
Yeah. It turns out to be not that important after all. Okay. So the obvious question you have to ask yourself is if a couple, okay, if if a couple don't want to be married, that's fair enough. That's their decision, right?
Mhm.
And I presume the reason for wanting to be married is that they don't want to be married for whatever it might be. They think it's an old-fashioned institution, or they've had bad experiences with their parents, or whatever. Who knows, whatever the reason might be. But the bottom line is they don't want to be married. Okay, presuming that they can be. This is not otherwise an impediment, and the only impediment here has to do obviously with age. In other words, you have to be the right age, and now even being of the same sex is not an impediment. So there's really nothing to stop anybody getting married if they want to. And so if there if there is an institution which gives you all of these wonderful benefits, or so it seems, and you deliberately don't want to avail of it, right? It seems a little odd that you want to take the person's choice and, as it were, treat them effectively as if they were married. It's a bit strange, right? So what's happening is now there's another, I mean, one of the, sorry, just to come back again to Article 41 here. The state, it says, by the way, there's a commitment in here. Let me come back a second, let's find it. So 41.3, from which, by the way, the expression on which the family is founded is going to be excised. That says the state pledges itself to guard with special care the institution of marriage. Now, you have to ask yourself if this is entirely consistent, if effectively you're going to narrow the distinction between marriage and cohabiting couples so that there's effectively little or no difference between them. How does that satisfy the constitutional requirement to guard with special care the institution of marriage? It seems as if marriage is going to turn out to be one kind of durable relationship among others, and cohabiting couples are going to turn out to be another kind of durable relationship. Okay, and you choose whichever one you want. I don't see.
You say choose whichever one, but one of the things that strikes me, and I think other people, you said, there are reasons why people might choose not to get married.
Yep.
For they don't like the institution of their family, but it may also be that people choose not to get married specifically to avoid the legal responsibilities and requirements and duties and consequences of being married. For property,
Yeah.
they may have children from another relationship, for all sorts of practical reasons. They say, listen, I want to be involved in a sentimental relationship with this person. I may be in a physical relationship with this person, but I want to avoid the stuff that goes with marriage. Is this in a sense the state coming in and saying, well, tough. If it's a durable relationship, you whether you like it or not, your relationship is now going to accrue a legal status that you were actually deliberately trying to avoid.
It is quite, yeah. I mean, I'm a libertarian, right? I mean, for me, if two people don't want to get married, that's their decision, and presumably the reason they don't want to get married is because they don't want to be married. Okay, and therefore, I don't see where the state gets off bringing it about through legislation that a couple who deliberately don't want to be married are going to be effectively married in a kind of way, whether they like it or not. It's really very strange. You can come at it from both ends. It's really very peculiar. So I don't quite understand that. So it's very, very odd. Now, by the way, so the minister is very anxious, Roderick O'Gorman is very anxious to assure us that durable, all of the stuff that has been speculated upon, polygamy and polyandry and so on, I'll come to that in a moment. That's all fantasy. This only concerns cohabiting couples and parent-child relations. But that's not what the phrase actually says. It says durable relationships. And of course, certainly cohabiting couples would fit into that description.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure about the parent-child one. That's a bit odd, but let's take it for granted that fits in as well. It doesn't mean, by the way, that other things don't fit in there. And that's the problem. Okay, so I mean, let's give him the benefit of the doubt and accept that cohabiting couples and parent-child relations fit into that expression, fall under that expression. Trouble is, its extent seems to me to go well beyond that, and that's the real problem, right? So the questions you have to ask, and which haven't been answered, is what's a durable relationship? When does it start? When does it finish? How do you know you've got one? What kind of evidence do you advert to? And the chair of the Electoral Commission, Judge Marie Baker, was suggesting that, well, all sorts of evidence, you can't be tied down to specific things. But for example, if a couple were to receive a joint invitation to come to a birthday party or a Christmas party and so on. And you're like, seriously? This is what is going to constitute evidence of a durable relationship? Does it have to last any length of time, any minimum length of time, or even a commitment to last a particular length of time? And the answer is no.
So, okay, on the time question, because again, this is durable.
Yeah.
Now, I heard one of the members of the government, I can't remember who, I think, but I know, but I won't say because I may get it wrong. Said use the word, said, well, we all know what it means. It's permanent, but
Mm,
that's not what durable means.
no, no,
And in
it's
fact, marriages are not
even
permanent.
that. Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
all marriages end, and so ultimately, if we want to be dark about it, but we have introduced divorce, so marriages are stable and durable, but not necessarily permanent.
Yeah.
But what is there any context? Is there any sort of history or jurisprudence? Is there somewhere we can look that will tell us? Well, like when you get a tenant in a house, you can only leave them in for so many days. After that, they acquire rights.
Yeah.
When people move in together, should they be okay? 6 months we have to leave now because this is just about to become a durable relationship, or we have 1 day less than a year, or else
No,
it's a durable relationship. How do
no,
we know what is durable?
we don't.
And also, and sorry, the other side is, do both people in the relationship, if we're talking only about two people, have to both agree? But what if one person feels that it's durable and the other person says, "Well, I never meant it was." Does that affect it? Do you see?
Again,
Or am I? Is that a
no,
silly
no,
question? No.
those are great questions, and they haven't been answered, right? I mean, see, so okay, here we know that okay, if two people go to get married, there are formalities they have to go through, right?
Hmm.
Both of them have to go through. It has to be witnessed, it has to be attested. Okay, they're told what it implies, and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
And at 1 minute to noon on Thursday, the 27th of January, they're not married. And at 1 minute afternoon on the 27th of January, they are married.
Yes.
There's a very specific cut-off point. Okay. Before this, you weren't married. After this, you are. There's nothing like that in a durable relationship. And durable simply means capable of lasting. That's all it means. That's what the word means. Durable means capable of lasting. Well, I mean, we might be together, myself and my inamorata, for 6 months, and it's capable of lasting. And then we
Hmm.
discover we're fundamentally incompatible, and suddenly it has stopped. Was it durable during the time we were together?
So
Or
what you're saying there is that it's not even about something which is actualized,
yeah,
but something merely that has potential.
that's exactly right. That's where the comes from.
Oh, but yes, which
Yeah.
I've never. So it's something which is open to the possibility of lasting.
Yeah. Now, you asked about if there was any sort of precedent for this, and the answer is yes, there is in European law. But what's very interesting about that is I'll come back to that in a second in the context of what a government tuna minister said. But Rodiger Gorman said that the definition, this is a quote from him, the definition of durable that we are seeking to put into the Irish Constitution is not influenced by the EU law definition of durable. So even if we were to look to EU law for a precedent here, the minister has said explicitly that that's not what they want to put in. Now, it's interesting that in the context of European law, this durable relationship thing has occurred primarily in relation to people, the right to reside within the European community. And there are a number
Hmm.
of cases where somebody outside the community has claimed to be in a durable relationship with somebody who is an EU citizen and therefore is seeking the right to do that. And in fact, again, who is it? Where's the person I want? Oh yeah, the Minister of State, Neil Richmond from Fine Gael, said
Yes.
on the Tonight Show on Virgin Media on December the 15th, before he was called into order, right? It, namely durable relationships, has serious consequences, particularly when we think of immigration law and proving that someone is a family member or family reunification. This would allow that to be accommodated as well. Now, notice Roderick Gorman is anxious to tell us that this only applies to cohabiting couples and
Hmm.
parent-child relationships. And here you have the Minister of State telling us that this actually applies to family members or family reunification. Now, that's how it has worked in EU law, and therefore you can see why Roderick Gorman is very keen to tell us that the notion of durable that he and his government want to put in doesn't relate to that EU thing. And then you go, well, really? This is the only
But
thing we've got.
he
Sorry,
says,
could I finish on this one?
sorry,
Because
no,
to
sorry, go on.
round that off, I mean, this is where Michael McDowell is playing a blinder on this one because he has made the points that I and others have made as well, but he's made it particularly well. And because of his standing as a former Attorney General, Minister for Justice, Taoiseach, and so on. So he says, this was in the Irish Times on the 10th of January. He said, concerning durable relationships, quote, are we talking about households with one male cohabiting with two women or vice versa? Or polygamous relations recognized abroad? Are we confining the term to households at all? Are all such relationships to constitute the, quote, natural, primary, and fundamental unit groups of society, unquote, from now on, as the amendment proposes? Is a family to include relationships where one party to the relationship is by agreement in a durable relationship with another? And here's the interesting part. What are the implications for family law, immigration law, tax law, citizenship and nationality law, and inheritance law, to name but a few? And your listeners may remember that I quoted again a member of the right-thinking people in the Dáil as asking a
Mhm.
similar question.
Yes.
And so the government is very anxious to say, no, 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 we're not talking about anything like that. But here's the question. Since we don't know what a durable relationship is, we don't know when it starts, we don't know when it finishes, we don't know what the evidence is for its existence, right? And so there's a very interesting point, which I and others have brought up, and it's this. As things stand in Irish law now, under Section 57 of the 1861 Offences Against the Person Act, bigamy is prohibited.
Hmm.
Okay. You may not be in two marriages at the same time. But what's to stop you being in two durable relationships at the same time?
Hmm.
Or even what's to stop you in being in a marriage and also in a durable relationship? In fact, what's to stop you being in multiple durable relationships at any one time? Are all of these to be covered by this phrase? If not, why not? There's nothing to indicate, as it were, that even if we accept, as I said, that the minister is genuine in thinking that this is meant only to cover cohabiting couples and parent-child relationships, that it doesn't or cannot also include strange things like this. Now, Professor Oren Doyle in Trinity, whom somebody I know and respect and is a constitutional scholar, has said, oh no, don't get all excited about it.
Hmm.
The Supreme Court is not out to subvert things.
Yes.
And that's perfectly true, but that's not the point. Okay, the point is, he said, a durable relationship, because of its being inserted into Article 41, which is about marriage, has to be marriage-like, something like marriage. Okay,
Hmm.
fair enough. Well, that would rule out sort of, just friendships. But presumably, so let's take somebody, for example, who is uh, in a series of polygamous marriages. So
Yes.
let's say I'm an adherent of Islam, and I have four wives. Now,
Hmm.
that's not a group relationship. It just means that I am married to A, I am married to B, I am married to C, and I am married to D. Each of
Hmm.
those is an individual marriage. The wives themselves are not related to each other. They are all related to me by
Yeah.
marriage. So what could be more marriage-like than those relationships? Okay. Now, so even without rescinding or repealing Section 57 of the Offences Against the Person Act, right, it would seem to me that somebody could say, well, I'm married to A, and even though in my country I'm married to B, C, and D as well, for your purposes of your law, I am in
Hmm.
a durable relationship, a marriage-like durable relationship to B and to C and to D.
So
And what's the
it
court
would
going to
be
get this? Yeah.
it would be correct to say that people say, oh well, no, bigamy will still be illegal in Ireland. But the
Yep.
point will be, it's not so much these, because we now have two separate things. The state, it's not that the state will recognize that this is marriage, But the state would have to recognize, if it's going to be fair and reasonable, that what we don't recognize it as marriage, but we do recognize that it is a durable relationship.
Exactly.
And it's very marriage-like, because it is, in fact, for a billion people or so, in fact, marriage. Like, when, to go back a little bit, uh, when Minister O'Gorman said, this is not what we're putting into the Constitution, the European thing, it's not. How does he know? How does he know how the court will see it? Surely it would be perfectly reasonable for an Irish court, which is a court which is in a state in the EU. The court, we know, at times looks to other jurisdictions. It looks to constitutional cases in the United States, or law in the UK and other places, for guidance on things, or inspiration, or whatever. I mean, it's not binding in the same way as Irish law would be. But
Yeah.
how does he know
Yeah.
that
Well,
it won't be that?
in
He's not in
fact,
the court.
no, indeed. In fact, there's a Supreme Court judgment, Pervez against the whatever Minister for Justice and Attorney General and so on, 2020. The judgment of which was written by, of all people, Justice Marie Baker,
Mhm.
who is now the chair of the Electoral Commission, and in the context of which she's told us her idea of what a durable relationship would be. It would be continuing, and I can't remember what the other word, but interestingly enough, the two words she uses in her judgment are the words that appear in the brochure that was produced by the Electoral Commission, which tells us that this is what durable relationship means. Now think about that for a second. The Electoral Commission, their understanding of what durable relationship means derives, or is effectively coincident with the
Mhm.
words used by the chair of the Electoral Commission in her capacity as a Supreme Court judge, commenting on a case involving immigration possibilities
Mhm.
and so on and so forth. But I would say, how does the Electoral Commission get to know what this means? Right? They don't know any more about it than we do. So again, I want to make the point clear, because it's very important, I think, for your listeners to understand that even if we accept, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but
No,
even
no.
if we accept the bona fides of Roderick O'Gorman, and that it's the government's intention that this phrase should cover uh, uh, cohabiting couples and parent-child relationships, and we accept that they are covered by that, by the phrase durable relationship. It doesn't follow from that the phrase durable relationship doesn't also cover other things, whether the government wants them to, desires them to, thinks that they do or not. It doesn't make any difference. And so I could imagine a situation where somebody rocks up before the court and says, whatever, I'm married to X and I'm in a durable relationship with Y. And now the question is all of the complicated things, because remember, law deals, I mean, law really isn't all that concerned about, say, the psychic or even the physical aspects, say, of marriage, whether somebody likes somebody else and so on. It has to deal with tangible things like property and claims and succession and pensions and all of the other things, all of the other material, gross material, but very important things. Okay, there's a phrase in law which says, de minimis non curat lex. The law does not concern itself with trifles. If A and B are married, it's not an issue for the court that A and B don't like each other.
Mhm.
Okay, it is still an issue that they are married. And until they cease to be married, they're married in the eyes of the court. End of story. So this is the problem. And so I mean, if you come back to this thing about the durable relationship, so when all this, so you could have a situation where if people were in durable relationships, they could, in a sense, circumvent the limitations of the bigamy law, because there wouldn't
Mhm.
be claimed to be married to two people. They would just be in durable relationships to two people. And now you have to ask yourself, is that what we want? Or even as a possibility? So look, there's a very simple question again that has to be asked here. If people want to be in a marriage-like relationship, you know what the best thing they could do is?
Get
Get
married.
married. Okay, what's stopping you? Right? So the solution to all of this, non-problem, I would think, doesn't lie in the insertion into the Constitution of a dubiously meaningful phrase. The consequences, by the way, which would be if Senator McDougall is to be believed to bring, quote, damaging and costly uncertainty into whole swathes of law, from pensions, family law, tax law, migration law, residence law, and succession law, to name but a few, but simply to get married.
We have a question. There was a question from was presented from a listener. Now, I want to make clear, Professor Casey doesn't pretend to be a constitutional lawyer. He's a professional. He's a philosopher by profession. But so I don't want to be unfair to you, but you can give your opinion. But you've been reading around this fairly extensively, so you may have a sense of it. So the question is, I am not clear about the position of single mothers before and after the referendum. Is there a protection for them in the 2015, it says here, change to the Constitution? If it passes, will durable relationships apply to the father if they're not living together, but he has rights as a father and visiting rights to the baby?
I don't think that I can't answer that question, and I
Yeah.
don't think anybody else can, because
Ah,
nobody knows. That's the whole
because there
point.
has been discussion about whether or not this may affect issues around um, that's I think the other referendum about whether it will affect child support payments that at the moment are required because of the protection of the necessity that women should not be forced to leave the home because of economic necessity. But you're saying that the problem is you can't answer it, but the reality is that as it stands, nobody really can answer it.
Nobody can answer. And in fact, I suggest, take a case along the lines of the O'Mara case to come before the courts for them to actually give it full legal consideration and to determine what the meaning of this particular phrase is in relation to that particular context. I mean, who can say? Okay. And
No.
again, the ultimate determiner of the meaning of the Constitution is not the government.
Mm.
Right? Okay. And so on. It is the Supreme Court. Right? And
So
they don't make moot judgments. That is to say, they don't sit around just on a kind of rainy Wednesday afternoon and say, "Hey guys, what does this phrase mean?" and then issue a statement to tell you that. They wait for in other words, the common law tradition is the courts don't make moot judgments. The courts wait for a case to come before them, specifically with a claim of a particular kind,
mm,
argued back and forth, okay, and then having heard all that has to be said and heard the authorities cited and so on, they go off and they think about it, and then they come back and they tell you. So until that time, nobody really knows. People can have opinions, and people can say what they want, and people can say what they intend it to mean. But in the end, if you introduce a phrase like durable relationship into the Constitution, it will mean, in the end, whatever the Supreme Court says it means. And it will apply to whatever the Supreme Court says it applies. And by the way, even if that is at one time limited to the specific items, for example, that Mr. O'Gorman wants, there's no guarantee that it couldn't actually, in time, extend further. This is the real problem. Yeah.
yeah, because
And
a phrase, by its nature, a phrase which is essentially vague,
yeah,
there is no concrete history in law which establishes with clarity what this means. To put it into the Constitution, maybe this is not an unfair question, but it struck me. I wonder, do you have any opinion if this could have been avoided? But at different places in the Constitution lays down certain parameters and then says, "as shall be regulated by the law," for example.
yeah.
Could this have been said, durable relationships, brackets, as shall be defined or regulated by Dáil Éireann? Could that have been done?
Well, again, I hadn't thought about it, but just thinking on the fly here, the answer would seem to be, I don't see why not. In fact, Michael McDougall has said that these referendums aren't actually necessary to achieve any policy goals. In other words, it could have been done
Hmm.
by legislation,
Yeah.
by and large, right? So it's kind of curious that that we're attempting to kind of do, I suppose, specific kind of microscopic legislation by constitutional means on an issue which might have been dealt with in in other ways.
Is
Um,
i-
yeah,
is it
it's
unfair to say that there is a sense that some critics have said that what this is really about isn't act is it's more performative than actually a concrete attempt to address a particular problem which needs to be resolved.
I would think so. It's extremely odd, and as I said already, it narrows the gap between marriage as an institution, which is supposed to be guarded by the state.
Hmm.
And it's hard to see how this actually, when you have this kind of convergence where marriage is turning into kind of just one durable relationship among others, and cohabiting couples are kind of in a kind of quasi marriage despite their best intention not to be married, the two kind of meeting together. It seems to me in that situation, one thing that you definitely haven't done is to guard the institution of marriage. If it becomes virtually indistinguishable from non-marriage, how can you be said to have guarded the institution of marriage? By the way, I just found this because I was looking for it. I had a record of the. Remember, I mentioned the Pervez case versus the Minister for Justice and Equality. That's 2020. This was a case that concerned how the Minister for Justice and Equality was to approach an application by a third country national to be treated as a permitted family member by reason of being in a durable relationship with a
Hmm.
union citizen. Now that the decision of the court was delivered by Miss Justice Marie Baker, right? And this is what she had to say about what durability meant. And I quote, in order to be durable, the relationship must be one which has continued for some time. Well, what's that, a week? A month?
Sometime.
Sometime. And to which the parties are committed with an intent that the commitment continues for the foreseeable future. Well, here's where we now run into evidential problems. How do we know whether or not that is the case?
Hmm.
And then she says, while the length of the relationship may be relevant in assessing the degree of commitment, the duration, this is important, the duration of the relationship was not its defining feature for the purposes of the European directive. And this is interesting. The Supreme Court held that the terms partner and durable relationship were capable of being understood in a non-technical, literal way, and it was therefore not necessary for the transposing regulations to provide detailed criteria to identify the factors to be taken into account in assessing an individual application. What that means is, when you take out the lawyer speak, is there are no necessary and sufficient conditions that have to be met in order for something to constitute a durable relationship. The courts are taking it upon themselves to decide in every individual case whether something is or isn't a durable relationship. Okay, it says we do this not by the application of a general policy, but by, I'm quoting again, but by reference to the individual facts and indicia, in other words, indicative factors
Hmm.
of the relationship put forward by the applicant and established by evidence. And finally, the Supreme Court held that the evidence need not always be in documentary form, but can be a narrative explaining the context of the relationship, how it arose, how long it has endured, where the couple have lived, what elements of their life have been and are still interconnected, and any personal factors which they may wish to show to establish their commitment to one another. In other words, the court is saying, we don't need documents. Okay, we don't need anything in writing. We don't need anything sworn before justice of the peace or whatever. You can come and tell us a story. Come and tell us a story about when you met and how wonderful it was and how you've lived together and so on, and we'll make a decision on that basis. And I'm going, this is really, really strange. And so from that judgment, oh yeah, I've got the two words now. The 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 electoral commission has taken the words committed and continuing, which are precisely the words, by the way, which occur in this judgment. So there's
Hmm.
been kind of, if you're part, I hope that Justice Marie Baker will excuse me saying this, but there's a kind of intellectual incestuousness about this, in that the Electoral Commission without adverting to it, by the way, have simply told us in the booklet that this is what durable relationship means. Now we have a problem there because you'll see immediately a tension between what the Electoral Commission are telling us it means, which comes from the European context,
Hmm.
and what Roderick O'Gorman is saying is that the word durable, as he intends it to be used, has nothing to do with the European context. To which I would say, ladies and gentlemen, one story or the other, but you got to get your story straight. Both of these cannot obtain. It either does or doesn't come from the European context. Which is it?
The Constitution is our foundational legal document.
Yep.
Now, back in the day, very long time ago, when I was a student and studying constitutional law back in as a very poor philosophy student, admittedly, well, you not universally recognized, but generally recognized, was that the fundamental nature of a constitution is that it is conservative. Its job, in a sense, is to restrain rash and quick action, to say, no, you have to have special processes. There are certain things we want to protect, and we're going to make it difficult for you to change those. And so this is the basis for the kind of society we want. So, and you had to be careful what you put into it. And when you change this, if there's this lack of clarity, even if this, let's see, I wonder if you would agree with me on this. Even if you and I shared all of the ultimate long-term goals and desires of the people presenting this, the fact that there is this fundamental clarity about precisely how it's being done, that in itself should be a priori, at that point, a reason to say we're going to say no.
Oh, yeah.
If you want us to do this, come back with a better attempt, come back with a better effort, because as it stands, other than the fact, also, by the way, we were saying beforehand, there was polling done, and when they asked people about what they knew about this referendum, people who had said they were going to vote for it, 53% of all respondents said they knew virtually nothing about it. The total figure came to around 8% of people said that they felt well informed.
Oh, that's amazing.
Is that a sensible basis for changing the Constitution?
No. Let me come back to your first point, which is this. If you were engaged in buying a house or a car, there was something which had a large outlay, it wasn't trivial. And somebody presented you with a contract which had swiggly diggly in the middle of it, right? Or whatever, okay?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
you said, what does this mean? And the person says, oh no, don't worry about that. That just means whatever. Okay, I don't know about you, but I would say, hang on a second. I'm going to have my lawyer look at that one,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't want to sign I don't want to sign a contract which has swiggly diggly in it when I don't know what that means or what that commits me to, right? And I would think that when it's evident, as I said, from the people I cited at the start of our interview here, that even people, if you like, on the kind of who would be for these kinds of things were saying they didn't know what it meant. And could they have more clarification? And what were the implications for X, Y, and Z, tax, succession, and all of the rest, right? I would think that's simple prudence. Okay, I mean, first of all, you should actually go out and find out about it if you don't know,
Hmm.
right? But to vote yes for a change to a document as fundamental as the Constitution, when you don't know what it means, it seems to me is reckless. It's
So
simply reckless and shouldn't be done.
if we have some of our listeners here who were intent on voting no, and they're socializing with friends or family members who are unsure, before we finish up, if you were going to say to them synthetically, there was one thing you would say to somebody about this, and you wanted to give sort of one synthetic reason why you should vote no, what would that be?
I would say simply, if you don't know, vote no. If you
If you
don't
don't
know,
know.
vote no. And by the way, it might say, well, the minister has told us. And you say, well, he's the one trying to sell you the used car.
Yeah.
Okay. He would say that, wouldn't he? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you don't know, the only safe thing to do is to say no. This is not a trivial matter. Changing the Constitution is a serious matter. Okay. And I think that anyone who claims to, if you like, to be a responsible citizen should make every effort to acquaint themselves with, to get as clear a perspective on this as they can by listening to both sides, not just to me and to others who are
Sure.
opposed to it, but to both sides, and then to make up their minds. But if they fail to do that, or if they're in a position where they can't do that, or if they simply cannot understand what the issue is, then the only safe thing is to vote no. If you don't know, vote no.
Both. For those who are, if anybody's out there is interested, I think I'm fairly sure you have read it. Micheál McDougall composed an 8-page
Yes,
guide to this, which I think does the job very well
it does. Yeah, it's
of
excellent.
raising all of the various problems and issues and the lack of information, the fact we haven't been given the advice and the issues that were raised during the discussion led on to we haven't been we're told we can have that, but not until we voted, which seems to be a strange thing. So if anybody's out there,
We're back to sweetly diddly. Okay, you just sign the contract and I'll tell you what it means. Okay,
we'll tell you
afterwards.
afterwards.
Sure, that you would do that if you were buying a house or a car. Sure, you would.
Jared, thanks a million for joining us. I don't know if I'm sure we'll be back talking again, if not on this issue, on other issues in the
All
future.
right.
But for tonight, I'd like to thank Professor Ger Casey. I'd like to thank you for joining us. And again, before you go, you can click on that like button and on that donate button. Anything you do, we'll use to the best of our abilities to support those values that we share. Thank you very much and good evening.
Good evening.